Here we go. Now, I think the way I want to do this, folks, is so that we don't get into the thick of thin things, is let me get through the slides, and then we should have lots of time for questions and discussion about parliamentary procedure and its use in membership business meetings and even with committees. I think that'll be the best way to go unless there's just something that you're just itching to ask. And I developed this presentation partly because I'm on the Leadership Development Committee and I've been on it this is my 6th year. And I've been to a number of membership business meetings, and I notice that there's variable understanding and comfort among our leaders and our members in the use of parliamentary procedure at our meetings, and that people can be intimidated if they don't feel comfortable with parliamentary procedure, and that might hinder their participation in our business meetings. And I thought it'd be good to develop this slide series, and I've got some other handouts that Sarah has put into the chat function. So if you go into chat, they may not be there yet, but they will be. You can open those up and save them on your desktop if you want the handouts for these slides, as well as some other handouts that help you understand the different motions and just basically parliamentary procedure. And like I said, we're going to record these for those who can't make it today. Now, my background in parliamentary procedure, I've been a youth and adult instructor on parliamentary procedure for over 40 years. And I have served as the Faculty Senate Parliamentarian at New Mexico State University for a few different terms for different Faculty Senate chairs. So I've had that role of being the parliamentarian as well as teaching it to people who are competing in parliamentary procedure contests, youth, and adults who are going to teach youth parliamentary procedure. So let's move forward. And our use of parliamentary procedure is consistent with Principle 5, right of conscience and use of democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. And it's in harmony with Article 5, Section 6 of our bylaws. All of our business meetings shall be conducted according to Robert's Rules of Order, duly revised, except as specifically stated in these bylaws or amended by a vote of the society. So yeah, we're one of the churches that follows Robert's Rules of Order. This is from the UUA website. The bylaws of many congregations call for the use of Robert's Rules of Order, the most recent edition, and therefore it's advisable to have present a parliamentarian who is familiar with these rules, who can advise the moderator on questions of procedure. And I think a good parliamentarian also advises the membership, the congregation. They're educative for the congregation members too. So I have volunteered to the board to serve as a parliamentarian at the membership business meetings, just to help those meetings to go well by Robert's Rules of Order, and to educate and to make sure that we're doing it right. Some definitions. Parliamentary procedure is just a coordinated system used.
I think you're muted.
Unmute me. Yeah, it's just a coordinated system used to conduct business when working in a group. So there's nothing real fancy about that. And then motions, there's a lot of them. We're going to hit the highlights here. They're proposals or item of business which the group uses to make various decisions during a meeting. And there's a gavel there. Some chairs like the gavel. I have a gavel here, and The rules of using the gavel, just simply, if it's used, there's a tap following any decision by the assembly or group on a motion, just a simple tap that signifies that that item of business is done and we're moving on to the next item. 2 taps at the beginning of a meeting to come to order. And we see this in courtroom dramas where the judge goes crazy and everybody's gone crazy. So the judge is doing any sharp taps, please, that's a come to order. And then it's important if the president's using a gavel at a business meeting, not to bang it, just tap it and try not to use it as a pointer stick and wave it around. Put the gavel down when they're not using it. The purposes of parliamentary procedure. It ensures the rule of the majority. In the end, whether it's a 2/3 or a simple majority vote, the majority will win the day. But it protects the rights of the minority and rights and privileges of the individual. Everybody has an opportunity to speak up and influence the outcome. So if it's done right, if it's used correctly, it opens up opportunity and fairness. It helps to maintain order because you're following, the different motions have different components that you follow, but also you're following an order of business and you're maintaining order. You have an organized meeting. And there's protocol or courtesy extended to everyone. A good example of this is when we're in our membership business meeting and we're discussing the main motion like a budget or an amendment to the budget. All of the discussion goes through the chair, goes through the president. You address the president, you don't address each other unless you go to committee of the whole, which I'll talk about later. And that ensures a certain level of decorum, a high level of decorum that is in harmony with our right relations covenant. Now I put in a few things that might be useful for committees too. And here's an agenda for a committee meeting, an example of one, a call to order, lighting of the chalice, inspirational reading and check-in. And we're using Soul Matters and Leadership Development Committee for our inspirational readings. Those are monthly materials from UUA that are coming to us through Reverend Kalani. And that's worked really well to have those inspirational materials, the Soul Matters materials for our committee meetings. Sometimes this is done by email, but we could review the minutes from the previous meeting. Any unfinished business would come next from the meeting before that didn't get done, followed by new business and adjournment. And that's just a simple 6-step agenda for a committee meeting that would work well for most committees in our church. And in doing the minutes, the minutes follow that agenda. The agenda is an outline for your minutes. So you just do the agenda again with the headings and put in the pertinent facts, what happened. And this is the most important material. If there are any motions during a meeting or any decisions made by consensus, the minutes should reflect the motion, who made and who seconded the motion, and the vote count and outcome. And if it's a decision reached by consensus, what the decision is. And minutes shouldn't be a transcript of debate. They're not a screenplay. So if you're taking minutes, you don't have to, Annetta like that, you don't have to put Annetta and then put what Annetta said. you can skip all the debate. You don't have to do that. So minutes are usually very, very brief, and they hit the highlights of the decision-making of the meeting.
Tom, can we ask a question?
Yeah, we're not going to do too many questions because I want to get through and then leave a lot of time for them. But Yeah, if you got one, go ahead and ask it.
Should the minutes include who voted which way, like, or just what the
No,
vote was?
no, they shouldn't. Just the count. Just the count and the outcome. Yeah, unless you get a motion to do a roll call vote, then you would, a roll call vote, which is often done in our legislature, they go on record. But in our case, we wouldn't do that. Now, here's our quorum rule.
You mean we would never do a roll call vote?
Well, I mean, you could if you wanted to, but that would be a vote on that would be a motion to do a roll call vote and have people,
Okay.
and that would be discussed. And well, it's a motion on voting, so that's non-debatable. You would go to a vote on whether you would do that or not. And if you do it, then your minutes would show the roll call. But
On
under normal
occasion,
circumstances-
somebody asks to have their vote noted. And it should be,
that would take
should
a
be
formal
done.
motion.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
not
that
if
would
one
take a
individual says, I want the minutes to reflect that I voted no, or I abstained or something, then the minutes can reflect that at the individual's request.
Yeah, I guess that would be okay. But others don't have to go on record if they choose not to. So here's our quorum rule. 20% of the members shall constitute a quorum. And when you have a quorum present, you can conduct business. And there's different types of votes. The majority vote is at least one more than half of the votes cast among members entitled to vote, excluding blanks and abstentions. And the 2/3 vote would be similar, but it's 2/3 or more of the votes cast among members entitled to vote, excluding blanks and abstentions. So if you have a quorum, just taking it to the extreme, and you need a 2/3 vote and only 3 people vote, 2 people vote for it and 1 vote against, and you get 50 abstentions, it would pass. The abstentions aren't counted as no votes. Now that's an extreme case, but it just illustrates that the votes that you count in making a decision when you have a quorum are the ayes and the noes.
Is it a legitimate thing
And
to
then
adjust that?
sometimes-
Could we choose in some circumstances to change that?
Well, then you would be suspending the rule for Robert's Rules of Order on that.
And so that's not
You could have that motion and require a 2/3 vote because our bylaws do allow that. 2/3 vote to suspend the rules.
so that would be suspending the rules.
Yes.
Okay.
Now you can't suspend the bylaws, but you can, our bylaw on Robert's Rules of Order, they're considered to be rules, and we can suspend a rule. And that requires a 2/3 vote. Some votes, like you might have people running for office and you've got more than the choices available, and we may elect by a plurality and give it to the people with the largest numbers of votes. So if in an election we need 3 places filled and we get 4 nominees, we would take the plurality, or the 3 that get the most votes. And then for the presiding officer, they usually maintain their neutrality, and they'll vote by ballot and to make or break a tie. They'll only vote if they can make a difference in the outcome in the direction that they think is best for the association, for the church. Otherwise, they'll maintain their anonymity and their neutrality and not vote. Always, though, by secret ballot, it's always appropriate for a chair to vote. Now, it's our convention to ask for abstentions when voting on motions at membership business meetings. And this part can be confusing to some members. What are abstentions and why are we doing them? So here's some reasons for abstaining. And you can vote and raise your hand and say, I abstain. But you could also be a silent abstention. I have no conviction either way, might be a reason for abstaining. Or I feel uninformed on the issue. Or I might have a conflict of interest, or 3 that are common reasons for abstaining from votes. Some kind of conflict of interest, or the outcome might favor you or a relative or something like that.
Does abstention affect quorum?
No, I said that earlier.
Oh, sorry.
Once the quorum's established, all votes are legitimate, regardless of the number of abstentions. But you just take the yeses and the nos in making the decision. Now this is one we haven't been following much. A phrase, this is Bylaws, Article 5, Section 7, a phrase, a vote of the society shall mean a vote of the members of the society at a membership business meeting. Whenever a motion is acted upon by the society, the report shall always include the number of pro and con, and the number of members of the society. So this bylaw basically says we have to take a counted vote on every motion at a membership business meeting. And if you think back to membership business meetings, we've been doing voice votes, maybe even some general consent, unanimous consent, and we haven't been doing counted votes. So really, we have to call for the orders of the day here and get back to this, or amend it, if indeed we just want counted votes on main motions and elections and maybe amendments to main motions. We should do a bylaws change.
Tom, I think vote of the society is only done on major issues, like our church takes a position on something. Then it's a vote of the society, and then yes, you need to count the votes and, you know, maybe even a roll call. Like when we decided that we would be supporting the Black Lives Matter movement 4 years ago.
Yes.
That was a vote of the society. And we did count the votes.
But that isn't clear here, Jan. That should be made clear here if that is the case. Right now, the way this reads is that all motions at membership business meetings are a counted vote. And your example is a good one for a counted vote, but also passing the budget should be a counted vote, as should be all the election outcomes. So this one needs some work if we want to allow for more flexibility to the president and to the assembly in terms of how we vote on motions at our membership business meeting. Methods of voting we might use, and CM means committee meeting and MBM membership business meeting. Show of hands or getting a true count is always in play. And we're going to try the Zoom polling tool here today to show how we vote on Zoom. A secret ballot's always in play in committees and membership business meetings. The way our bylaws are, a voice vote really isn't in play yet, unless we amend that part of the bylaws for membership business meetings. That's ayes and nays. Unanimous or general consent, not in play yet for membership business meetings. Might be good reason for that. I'll talk about general consent just a little bit. Consensus, usually the preferred method of reaching agreement on committees. This is working and discussing until you get 100%. I put commitment because that's really the key to consensus. Is making sure that when people leave the room, they're all going to back the decision. They're going to get behind it. The commitment is the important thing there. But sometimes committees will they'll go in and out. I noticed Committee on Ministry will reach decisions by consensus or by vote. So they kind of allow for a hybrid of parliamentary procedure and consensus building. And then here's the legend: committee meeting and membership business meeting. Now a little bit on unanimous consent. We shouldn't be using this yet for membership business meetings unless we can clear up that particular bylaw. But this can really speed your parliamentary procedure and your meeting up. The important thing here is to be transparent and to use it in such a way that makes things efficient, but it doesn't take away people's democratic rights or try to hide some other motive other than being efficient. So it's used to speed up meetings when it's clear that the formal vote's probably going to be unanimous. And so you don't have to get a second and you don't have to do debate. You can just move right along. And right now we don't allow for this with that one bylaw. If we were going to allow for this, we would have to specify when we want counted votes and when we can be more flexible. Now here's an example of how this might work. Right now for a committee meeting, the chair would say, shall we by unanimous consent meet the 4th instead of the 3rd Monday next month? This committee has a standing rule of meeting the 3rd Monday. This is leadership development. It's my own committee. And then the chair should call for objections, because that's really the most transparent thing to do here. Are there any objections? And then hearing no objections, we will meet the 4th Monday next month. So that's how quickly you handle that item of business. The chair senses it's a unanimous situation. They just say, use unanimous consent, ask for objections, and if they don't get any, that has been handled. That is basically the way the chair can propose a motion and get it handled expediently. Here's an example with an objection. Shall we by unanimous consent, same wording, and somebody objects. I object. There is an objection. This becomes a motion to suspend our regular rules. So suspend the rules of meeting every 3rd Monday of the month. Is there a second to meet on the 4th Monday next month? Member says second. Motion's not debatable and requires a 2/3 vote because we're changing kind of the rights and rules. It requires a 2/3 vote. So the chair states those pertinent facts. All in favor of the motion to meet the 4th Monday next month, raise your right hand. Opposed, raise your right hand. Any abstentions? The motion passes 8-2 with no abstentions. So that's more than a 2/3 vote. We shall meet the 4th Monday next month.
Not everybody has hands to raise.
Yeah, I understand. And people can't stand either. A rising vote is a raise of hands or standing, and as we know in our church, many people can't stand, so I use the raise of hand.
As I would like to get into how these pertain to Zoom. Is that going to be possible? Is that going to come up later, or?
Well, we're going to do a ballot here in a bit on Zoom.
A ballot.
And then it's we're going to do the polling tool. And then chairs should be transparent when you're using unanimous consent. They should be educative. They should let people know what they're doing and why they're doing it. And if there's a parliamentarian, they can help too. So it's clear that they're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes and shut down discussion, etc. So be transparent here. Make sure people understand and are comfortable with what's happening with the use of unanimous consent. We're going to learn different types of motions here, but I'll just cover there's the privileged, which take precedence over everything. Like adjourning a meeting is always in order. almost always, there's only one motion above it, setting the time and place for reconstituting the meeting. Those are called privileged motions. Then there's incidental. They arise out of, take precedence over other questions that are pending on the floor, and subsidiary that apply to the main motion. They follow an order of precedence. Then there's another group called the unclassified. Take from the table, reconsider, and rescind motions that have already passed. They fit in that group. And then the main motion itself, anything that brings an item of business before the assembly, like I move that we accept the proposed budget. That would be a main motion. The most common main motion we'll have at a membership business meeting, at least the annual one. And there's a handout here, so I'm going to escape and let's see, stop the share here, and then let me see if I can bring up this particular item here. No, it's not liking that, so let me go back to my slides. I was going to bring up one of the handouts that you're going to get. Let me try one more time. There it is. It showed up the second time. So this handout that you're getting, I call it the Beehive, and I got this from my Parley Pro class at Cornell when I was getting my doctorate. And it was a class that was done by the University Parliamentarian, really great guy. A great class. So the privileged motions are up at the top, and we're not going to talk about all of them, but the motion to adjourn would be the most common one that we might use. Here are the incidental motions. We'll cover a few of those today, and we'll cover a few of the subsidiary ones here. Wherever there's a sort of a stair-like look here, that's an order of precedence. So you can consider anything above that motion when it's on the table, but nothing below it. When you're on the staircase here, or the staircase up here too. And then here's your main motion. And a legend at the bottom tells you what requires debate or is not debatable, a 2/3 vote. Oops, move this to the side here so I can, there we go, move that out of the way. Which can be amended and which require a second. So that's a nice one pager that kind of, once you know what these motions are, it gives you the pertinent facts for them. So that's a handout that you all have, and it's a useful one that I've used a lot and share with my students. So I'll go back to the slides. And here we go. Handling a debatable motion. Everybody seeing the slides again?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, we're in the slide.
I can see him.
Okay. So on a debatable motion like the budget motion, a member rises and addresses the chair, or they raise their hand and they sit and they get recognized by the chair. And then they make their motion. I move to, or I move that. I move that we approve the proposed budget. The chair will get a second. Somebody else seconds it. And if you're keeping the minutes of the membership business meeting, you're writing down who made the motion and getting the words of the motion right. And you're also getting who made the second. The chair then states the motion and the members are given their chance to debate the motion. And then the chair will repeat the motion again before voting. And if it's been amended, it's an amended motion, and they'll repeat it in its amended form if that is passed before the vote. And then they'll announce the results of the vote and tap the gavel that we're moving on to something else. That's pretty simple. So here's an example. Move my little toolbar over here so I can read it. And main motions require a second. They're debatable and they require a majority vote. And they usually can be amended with the exception of bylaws changes. Our Article 13 of our bylaws doesn't allow for the amending of bylaws, but that is a bylaw that could be changed if we thought that that was a little too restrictive, and that if you have a quorum and it requires a 2/3 vote anyway for that, then, oh yeah, Sarah, remind me of something. Did you launch the poll, Sarah?
I'll launch it.
So go ahead. Here's a chance for us to try the poll. Is everybody seeing the poll in front of them?
Yeah.
This is just to practice how we would vote in a business meeting on Zoom. And let's pretend that this is last year's budget. How do you vote on the proposed budget? You could put accept, do not accept, or abstain. Go ahead and make a selection. Everybody go ahead and vote. Make a selection on pretending that we're voting on last year's budget. And right now I'm monitoring it with Sarah's help, and I'm seeing that 13 people have voted, 14 of 19, 15. Yeah, that's looking good. Any other votes? 17 now. Anybody else?
Need 2 more.
2 more people haven't voted. They might have stepped away. So let's go ahead and end
You've
the
only
poll.
allowed for 1 per participant, and some participants are couples.
Yeah, well, the 19 would be, yeah, and that's something we're going to talk about. The 19 would be the number of computers that we have. So that is, let's go ahead and end the poll and show the results. So the budget would pass 12 to 3 to 2. You see that? That's the polling tool. And some of these could be, items could be prepared in advance, but also with amendments and those kinds of things, we'll have to have Sarah develop these polls and get the votes as we go. And yeah, Jan has mentioned another training point that we have to make before the membership business meeting, if we do it on Zoom, is that every voting member has to have their own device. So if you have 2 or more people in a household, they have to all be on different devices to be able to vote.
Tom?
We're going to be pulling in iPads, laptops, computers, and phones to make sure that people have their opportunity to vote at a business meeting, and make sure that they're on different devices.
Tom?
So go ahead and get rid of that, Sarah, and I'll take whoever's question is coming here.
That was Mark.
Go ahead, Mark.
I wanted to know, we have to have a quorum at these NMM, M&M, the big votes.
Yes, membership.
We would have to have Sarah put us into a room so that she could only accept us in if we were members and legal voting members.
Well, I mean, we could look at that. However, and we do invite non-members to meetings, and they could even be involved in discussion, but they can't vote.
So
And
how do you control that?
Well, we're in an honor system face-to-face. I think we would just tell people that if you're not a member, please don't vote. I don't know. That would be something the board would have to work out with Sarah and have a list of members and figure out if there's a way to give the poll to just the members.
Ask the GA how they did it. General Assembly, the UUA.
We have had unwanted people come into Zoom meetings, and we have had to kick them out by putting legitimate people within a room.
Yeah. Well,
I think the best way we could probably avoid that is through the use of break rooms. So anyone that isn't eligible to vote, we can just put them in a break room while people vote.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. If you can do that, Sarah, that would be great.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's probable that we could do that.
And you'd be then in control of making sure then that people who were in the room See, but if you let people in who can or cannot vote, then it's a thing of trust, right? They choose to vote.
That's what it is now.
Do you get to know who voted what way?
No, we haven't in the past. We have not, again, we have not done a roll call vote on the budget or how people feel about bylaws or elections or any of that.
I think Jan had a good idea. Find out how they did it at General Assembly. If they could, whatever they did, I'm sure will be good enough for us and work for us.
Yeah, we have to use this polling tool and, you know, it's good to think now. I've been thinking about this. I'm not on the board, but as a leadership development person who helps with elections, and I volunteer to be parliamentarian, I can see that time would be our friend right now if we're educating people about how we're going to vote using the polling tool. But these things should be worked out in advance, and people need to be educated to be on different devices when they come to a meeting. And then if we can do a breakout room to move the non-members, that would be good.
And if I knew Roy wasn't going to be around, I could just change my name on the screen to Roy and put in Roy's vote.
Yeah.
You're not that kind of guy, Mark.
I know, but somebody could be.
Well, let me run through this slide. So, main motion, somebody says, I move we accept the proposed budget. We get a second. The chair repeats it. It's been moved and seconded to accept the proposed budget. Is there any debate? You allow for debate, which we had last year, had an amendment. And then no further debate. Let's vote on the motion to accept the proposed budget. Raise your right hand. And if we're going to use the Zoom polling thing, so that will be different. And then we go for abstentions. And I just threw in, for the heck of it, an example where it's a tie vote and the chair likes the budget and votes in the affirmative and passes the budget. So if you get that, 22 for, 22 against, 3 abstentions, it's a tie. The chair can vote if they choose to, or leave it alone and let it fail. The budget would fail. There we go. Now, debate. Decorum during debate. I put this in. This is so important, and working with my college students, we really emphasize quality debate, you know, making your point, you know, giving your position and giving whatever pertinent facts or information that you need. This is a courtesy. The person who makes the motion is often given the first chance of debate by the chair if they want the floor. And then debate should be to the chair, not other members. We're not in committee of the whole, so to keep our decorum, we address the chair with our debate. This is very important. It's kind of the heavy lifting of all committee and business meetings, is to conduct them within the right relations covenant. I know I haven't always lived up to the right relations covenant, and I find that I have to read it often, and especially before meetings, to get myself into the right frame, the right spirit for going into a meeting. So that's a good thing to remind people to do before business meetings and committee meetings, just to take a look at it before we go on in.
Is that on the website, Tom?
It's on the website, and I've attached it to chat so you can open it up and save it on your desktop. And yeah, before you go a second time, try to look around and see if others are going their first time. Let them go. And the chair should do that too. Thank you very much, Tom. We'll hold off on you because we've got Jan for the first time has some debate. Jan, go ahead. And then try to avoid duplicating, saying the same thing as somebody else, and try to be as concise and to the point as possible. If the chair wants to debate, they should give up the gavel to the vice chair. and debate. And then they would only resume the chair after that particular motion is disposed of. So if it's a debate on the budget, they could stand down and give the vice president the gavel, and the vice president could finish up the budget discussion, and in exchange for the chair being able to debate the main motion on the budget. And then double debating, this happens in committee meetings probably more than our membership business meetings, where things are discussed and then finally you get around to doing a motion and then you discuss them again. So to avoid that, try to get a main motion right up front so you're not double debating or going over the same territory twice, which wastes a lot of time. If it looks like a motion's going to come out of that, a good chair will say, it looks like this is heading for a motion. Do we have a motion? Let's get a motion out here. We had an amendment to the budget last year, and so handling an amendment is a good one. They require seconds, debates, and a majority vote. And they can be amended to one more level. For example, an amendment might change some kind of number, and the amendment to the amendment could change some kind of date. So you get a number and a date that are being discussed.
I'm a little confused already, Tom.
Amendments are to change the main motion, and they're just word changes. And you could get an amendment to an amendment where you're going to amend that amendment and change the wording in it. And then you vote backwards, the amendment to the amendment first, then the amendment, then the main motion. That gets really complicated. Usually we don't go to the second degree on amendments, but it can happen. Parliamentary procedure does allow for amendments to be amended.
Normally an amendment, you can say what you want to amend, but then it goes back to another meeting to actually get the wording and that sort of stuff, make sure it doesn't conflict with other amendments. So you don't actually amend the amendment at the meeting.
Well, that could happen. Yeah, that could happen. It could also pass. But it could happen that it could be referred to committee, where somebody says, I move to refer the amendment and the amendment to the amendment and the amendment to a committee, and so they can see how this works with other bylaws. That would be the use of the referral to committee. So here's an example. A member rises and they want to give Sherry $1,000 more for the main office. I already cleared this with Sherry. This is the one she said I should put in. She actually said double my budget. I settled for $1,000, which may be more than doubling. I don't know. Then there's a second, restated by the chair on the amendment. Now this is just a wording change. You're not giving Sherry's and the main office $1,000 more yet. Any debate? And there's no debate. Everybody's excited about giving $1,000 to the main office more. And you get the raise of hands and the count. And it's 54, 2 against, and 0 abstaining, so it passes. Now, that's just a word change. Now the budget has been amended by $1,000 for the main office, but you have not yet passed the budget. So the budget's amended, but now you go back to talking about the budget more, and another amendment or more amendments could come. Other things could be changed before you finally get to a main motion that's ready to vote on. So motions we might use, adjourn to close the meeting. Takes a second, not debatable. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Majority vote. And the meeting's adjourned. Incidental ones, the first three just ask for information. Point of parliamentary inquiry, somebody would get recognized and say, I have a question on parliamentary procedure. Does this motion require a 2/3 vote? It's just getting a clarification from the parliamentarian or the president. Point of information is just getting information. I've got a question. How much does this type of dishwasher cost? That's a point of information. These enter into debate, and you're just trying to get some information. A point of order is you notice the chair, the president, has made some kind of mistake in parliamentary procedure, and you rise to a point of order. You would say point of order, and you would raise your hand, get recognized. This vote requires a 2/3 vote, not a simple majority vote. Or you forgot to ask for debate on this motion and it's debatable. And so that's a member can call the chair on a mistake in parliamentary procedure. Motions on voting, we mentioned the roll call vote. It would just take a motion to vote by roll call on a particular item so that it would show in the minutes how people voted. That would be germane. That would be a motion on voting. Those are seconded, not debatable. They could be amended and just take a majority vote. So they're very quickly. We can often, going to a secret ballot, if it's a contentious emotional issue, sometimes people will say, I move that, because this is an emotional issue, I move that we vote by secret ballot. And if that passes, you hand out pieces of paper and have people format a little ballot and they vote yes, no, or abstain. So we could use that from that beehive. And some of the subsidiary ones, an example that Jim Basler gave is refer to committee. You can send something back to a smaller group for closer inspection, like is this harmonious with other bylaws? That is debatable. It can be changed. We could postpone something if it came up that we're just not ready to vote on the budget, we need another month, you could postpone the motion to accept the budget to a meeting in January instead of December. We might use that. That's kind of what happened last year. We did our information on the budget in December and ended up voting on it in January, when I think the original intention was to try to get the budget passed in December. I don't know if we ever had a formal motion on that, but that could happen. We want to delay a whole year passing the budget, but we may need another month for the Finance Committee to pull it all together and bring it back forward. Ending debate. Now, these kind of Robert's Rules of Order way of ending debate is to move the previous question, and that can also, a person can also say, I move to end debate. That requires a second because it limits our right, or a 2/3 vote because it limits our rights. But it's not debatable or amendable. So if the discussion's going on and on, you can move the previous question or move to end debate, and you get a second, and you go right to a vote. All in favor of ending debates, raise your hand. All opposed, and if it's 2/3, you end debate and you go straight to the vote. We could lay something on the table that's not as important as something else and then take it off the table after that more urgent item is passed. So there's two motions there, lay on the table and take from the table. And then I put this one in as one that we used in Faculty Senate when we, at NMSU, when we wanted to be able to have a more informal discussion on an item of business. You go to a committee on the whole, and now members of the assembly can talk to each other. It's less of a formal discussion. It's more of an open discussion back and forth. And then you come out of the committee on the whole when you go ahead and vote on the motion. That one could be used. So those are some ones. Committee on the whole isn't even on the beehive, but it is one that we could use. And we'll do practice a little bit. I've just got 2 more slides on the election, and then we're done and we can answer any other questions. So I've been involved in the last 5 elections. We got one coming up. And the bylaws aren't crystal clear on how to run our elections at annual business meetings. But I'm sort of taking what is the intent, giving us our democratic rights, as well as the LDC being a nominating committee and its process that it goes through, and trying to get something that perhaps we could use every time we have a business meeting, so people get used to a certain way of handling elections. And so often now we're only getting the slate. We're only getting those people that the Leadership Development Committee has been able to find for the open positions, and we're not getting any nominations from the floor. However, Robert's Rules of Order specifies that we get nominations from the floor, and that's why last year Charlie used the motion to suspend the rules and not do nominations from the floor, which could only be done with a 2/3 vote of the membership there at the meeting, to waive that rule of allowing for nominations from the floor. That does limit our democratic rights, but if nobody has any nominations, that's the way to do it. So we work on a slate and we take it to the Board of Trustees, and they approve it. So those people are already nominated for the positions that they've agreed to be nominated for. And when we get to the membership business meeting and the election, we start with the Board of Trustees and then go to Committee on Ministry and then finish with the Leadership Development Committee to make sure we're filling the spots. If we don't have that motion to suspend the rule, we allow for any nominations of qualified candidates from the floor to add to those nominated on the slate. And we've done that at some meetings, and in some we have not. This last one, we suspended the rule. In the spirit of getting this right, only members who are willing and able to serve should be nominated from the floor. Nobody should be nominated at that point who hasn't had a chance to say yes or no and thought about it and are a member. And if that can't be determined by the election, they should not be nominated. We don't second nominations. Now, the LDC gets bios from the nominees. So if we do get a nomination from the floor, we should give that person an opportunity to share their past church service and leadership experiences and what they will bring to the committee they are nominated for if elected. Give them a chance to share what has the similar material we asked for the bios. That's what we asked for. And then when nominations from the floor end, we move to voting. And we'd start with the Board of Trustees, get that all set, and we'd vote on the Board of Trustees first, and then to Committee on Ministry, then to Leadership Development. And he's a counted show of hands to accept the slate. We can do it. We can speed up and just accept the 3 candidates for the board, or the 3 for LDC, or the 1 for Com with a show of hands. Just accept the slate, which is what happened last year once we suspended the rule on nominations from the floor. But if we get nominations from the floor, then the LDC would be ready for ballots to pass out, at least for that particular committee that has more candidates than openings. And I had that ballot ready and run off and ready to go in case we did have any nominations from the floor at the last election. So by being clear on this, the LDC would always have a ballot there in case we did get nominations from the floor and more people than positions. And then we would elect by plurality. The people who get the most votes would be the 3 that get on the board. You get to vote for 3, and the ones that get the most would be the 3 that get on the board, or the LDC, or the one that gets the spot for the Committee on Ministry. Okay, and that's that. So we've had questions along the way, and any other questions here? Let's stop share and come back here, and we've been answering questions as we went. So do we have any others? We tried the polling tool, and that was successful. At least you got an idea of what we're looking at, and the board members who were here are already thinking about how we keep non-members from voting, and how do we make sure that all voting members can cast a ballot on all the different votes that we're going to have at a membership business meeting this December or next January, whenever it does occur. Anticipating what could happen. Any questions? Go ahead and unmute if you want to. Sarah, did you put those handouts up there for people?
Yeah, they should be available in the chat. If not, I can re-upload them real quick.
Yeah, check your chat, and if you see those handouts, I think you could just, now Sarah, they would just click on them and open them up, or can you drag and drop them from chat over to your desktop?
I think you're gonna click them and they should be downloading onto your computer, and then you'll be able to open them.
How many new board members are considering shortly, Tom?
Well, yeah, Paul, we've got, as people know, we've had 4 board members step down after the June meeting. And we have 2 people who have volunteered to be board members until our membership business meeting in December or January to finish out the year. So we have 7 now, 5 who were with the board plus 2 more. And then the Leadership Development Committee has a task. They've got to find 6 board members to accept positions on the board for this coming year, starting in January.
Oh, okay.
So we're meeting on Monday, tomorrow night, and we're going to talk about our strategy for getting 6 people to say yes to doing either 1, 2, or 3-year terms, because we have to stay within the rotation. 2 of the board members who stepped down had 1 year left, so there'll be a couple of 1-year terms. One had 2 years left, and there'll be 3, as we would any year, have 3 that we're going to ask to do 3-year terms. So it is a unique situation, and we're hoping that we can get people to, qualified and committed people to raise their hand and say, yes, I'll take one of those positions and join the board at the end of this year. And the board is going through a process. I don't know if Mark, you wanted to share that a little bit. They're going through it's a circle process with outside ministerial consultants. What is it called?
A restorative circle.
Yeah, restorative circle process. They've had 1 round with the outgoing officers and members of the board, and I've heard that they're going to do more work with the board reconstituted, and maybe there's a possibility too to do this with the 9 board members that we have, with all things going well. When we get
the restorative board is actually closed, the outside, and so
yeah,
we
just
did
the
not
board members.
right, and we did not include the new board members because we didn't want to burden them with what's going on there. But then we can move out and share with them after we come up with something too, which I think would be a good idea. But it's not fair to throw them into that, I think.
Okay.
And I don't want to discourage somebody from joining the board either.
Well, we wish you luck, and I think it's a time when we have to trust the process, the restorative circle process, and the board members, new and continuing, and the problem solving, and that's going to happen through this process as we move forward. And we're going to be working with the Leadership Development Committee to start making those calls to find people who are willing to take on those different terms. Does that answer your question, Paul?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah,
Tom, I have a question. I wonder if any thought has been given to abandoning Robert's Rules of Order, which are European, white-centric, and do not reflect cultural practices of other people who are a primarily white congregation, and so it feels comfortable. I know Robert's Rules, I've used them a lot, but even at GA, although there's still a basis of Robert's Rules, they're modified. And one of the first orders of business is to adopt the rules. And the rules are different from Robert's rules. It's the rules that modify Robert's rules with time limits and that sort of thing. And I want to recommend this book to the Leadership Development Committee and the board, Salsa, Soul, and Spirit. It speaks to the leadership, and the subtitle is Leadership for a Multicultural Age. And it speaks to the ways in which leadership are handled in the Latino, African American, and indigenous communities. So I think you would find that it's a very useful tool in developing our bylaws, adjusting our bylaws to reflect some of that. And the bylaws do need revision. They've been needing revision since they were first adopted because they don't allow for non-binary gender expression or identity, and several other.
Yeah, I think that's
what I consider major flaws, but
yeah,
I hope
think
somebody is working on revising the bylaws, and that whoever is doing so will check out this book that is available in the UUA bookstore.
The UUA in Boston mentions that there are a few congregations in the country that run their annual or their membership business meetings by a consensus process, but they recommend that congregations that do that receive training in how to manage that consensus process with a large group.
Before I'm going to feel good about doing
So I was aware of that.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know,
There may be something else out there that we might want to look at. Right now we have Robert's Rules of Order and Parliamentary Procedure. So again, my goal here is to help as many people to be comfortable and not threatened by it, and have it be used correctly as we use it. But thank you for that, Jan. That's really great.
Yeah, that's interesting, Jan.
Well, I think she left. Any other questions? Oh, there's Jan's back.
Yeah, Tom. Tom?
Yes, who's talking?
Sorry, it's Charlie.
Oh, hi, Charlie. Oh, there you are. Yeah.
I know a lot of times somebody with a loud voice will call for the question. Now,
Yes.
Is that the same thing as calling for the previous question? And does it require a vote?
It does if it's a formal motion. If somebody just yells question, that means they're impatient, ready to move on. They've heard enough. But it's not a formal motion. So if you hear that, it's designed to just get people to think, yeah, maybe we've had enough. And people do just sort of quit debating. But it isn't a motion. If somebody wants to end debate, they got to move to end debate or move the previous question. If somebody yells call for the question, that is a motion, I think. I call the question, that's a motion. Get a second, and you would go to a 2/3 vote to end debate. But just yelling the word question, that's just a hint. That's not a motion.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Anything else, anybody else? I want to thank you all for attending.
Well, I have a quick question, if you don't mind.
Sure, Linda.
Our bylaws don't allow for electronic voting or proxy voting. I assume we're working under an emergency order from the government because we can't meet in person. But at some point in time, I think we need to amend the bylaws to legally allow for electronic voting. So.
Yeah, that could be something you got to look at. Now, proxy voting is where somebody carries somebody's vote.
Yeah.
You know, Paul can't make the meeting, and Paul says, vote for Tom, and says, Katya, please take my yes vote for Tom to the meeting. So that's proxy voting. But we may want to take a look at, so we don't allow that. We don't allow anybody to carry anybody's vote on the budget or anything and vote vote 2 votes, cast 2 votes or more.
Yeah, it's just my understanding that unless the bylaws specifically allow for electronic attendance, at the board meeting, then it's a given that it has to be an in-person meeting. Now, obviously, we can't do that because of the present situation, but
Yeah, my feeling about the policies, like we have these policies that in the absence of a policy, we have more flexibility, not less. That's my interpretation of policy governance. I was trained in policy governance and actually did 2 consulting jobs, turning organizations into policy governance organizations. And if it wasn't specified in policy, it gave the board freedom to operate. And if it became clear that people wanted restrictions, there was a value to place a restriction on that. Then when people said this is the way it should be, that's when it was put into a bylaw change. It was put into writing. Mark?
Tom, are not Zoom meetings right off the bat suspended? You're suspending rules. If you can't have electronic voting, if you can't have, how do you meet quorum if you're Zoom?
Well, you know who's on, and you have somebody checking to make sure they're members, and you look at the number of total members in the church and get your quorum, the 20%, and you see if you have enough members who are there and set quorum. Now, we've had officers of the board do that last year. Lynn Pearson was counting quorum, maybe somebody else. People were coming in and they were checking the rolls, and they had the list of members and they were checking people off. And we signed. I think we signed.
If I'm just talking about a board meeting.
Oh, a board meeting?
Doing the whole board meeting by Zoom. Who's present? I mean, how do we determine, is anybody who can speak is present?
Yeah, anybody who's there, I would think, would be present.
What's the
quorum for the board? How many members have to be there to conduct business?
5.
It's 5? Okay, so if you have 5 who are there participating, you can conduct business.
If we have a board of 5, is it 5 still?
Yeah, I think so.
We all have to be there.
You've got a board of 7 now, so I think it's 5.
And if you mean by being there that we're all in the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, you're participating. Yeah. You're discussing, and for any business to occur, you would want to meet your quorum rule for the board.
Yeah. And you have to be present to vote. So.
Yeah, you got to be present to vote. You wouldn't want anybody to turn on their computer and then go out and work in the yard and say that they're attending the board meeting.
So if we were having a live meeting, and someone was on vacation in Puerto Rico, got on by Skype or something like that, they could be considered present because they're in the debate.
I would count that as present. Sure. Yeah. We could take a look at the bylaws. My recommendation to the board members is that if it doesn't exclude it, it's okay to do. I wouldn't run around and call a special meeting for bylaws to do electronic if we have the flexibility to do electronic in the bylaws right now, if it doesn't state face-to-face.
Yeah, I think that needs probably a legal interpretation on that.
Well, it does, but it'll come down on the side. It's okay.
I have another one, if nobody else is.
Go ahead, Mark.
Do you think, I'm going to be putting the agenda together for the next board meeting.
Yes. Sir.
And when I do put it together, I'm going to ask if we can accept you as an acting parliamentarian.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Okay.
And I think what do you think about the idea of having for those of us that are learning, that would be me, to have a beehive chart and be able to point to where we are on the beehive when
Yeah.
when things are coming up, so we know where we are in discussing and where we are in those
Right.
things.
So, click on those handouts if you want them and save them on your desktop, maybe in a parliamentary procedure folder, and have them there.
Enlarge it so we can put it up for view for everybody at the meeting, so that
Yeah.
we can put a pin on where we are on the beehive.
You can do share my screen and do that with your arrow, your indicator with your mouse, and say, here's where we are. We're referring this to a task force or a committee, and you can kind of do that. But please, use those materials I sent you as a resource. That's the idea.
I'm very, very ignorant here, admittedly. And one of the really ignorant questions I had was when you were talking about somebody making a motion. No, making a motion to debate. Don't you have to have a motion and a second before you start debate?
That's right. Motion and a second, and then it has to be a debatable motion. Not all of them are. And then you open up debate. That's correct. I might have gotten tongue-tied there, but that's how that works on a debatable motion.
Well, something got cobbed for me in that process.
So you allow for
if
it.
you already have a motion and you're having debate, why is someone making a motion to debate?
No, I don't think that was it. No, you have a motion, a second, and then start debate.
Okay.
And then thinking about the proper protocol and guidelines for effective debate. And I think some of this could help, like the debate slide, could help our committees. My observation over the years is we get all uptight about going beyond an hour on the most important meeting of the year, the annual or the membership business meeting. And meanwhile, committee meetings go 1.5, 2 hours or more with people yakking and yabbering about all kinds of stuff. And there's no discipline on committee meetings. And they just go on and on and on. You get 15-minute check-ins. You get, just things that make it so people don't even want to serve on a committee. So some of what we need to do is cut down. Let's get, when we're in committee and we're at a business meeting, we're conducting business. So we do want to have check-ins. We want to be empathetic, and we want to get done and get back to our other things. But I think we kind of have that reversed. I would rather see us take an hour and a half at an annual business meeting where the budget and elections and bylaws and whatever else are being considered, whether we go with Black Lives Matter, that kind of thing. These big decisions, makes more sense that we take an hour and a half there and try to get our committee meetings to be a little more efficient. So before COVID hit, I was talking to Eileen and maybe Katya, you too. I was talking about on on the membership business day, we'd have a 9 o'clock service, and then the business meeting would be at 10:30. We'd have a half-hour break. Maybe that day, Paul, we wouldn't have a roundtable unless it was at 9 also. And then we would have people there already, and we would go straight into the business meeting and be done by noon before people get hungry and get it done. Not this year, though. Mark, you had another question. Go ahead.
I did, but I just didn't want to jump in before somebody else said so.
Oh, you're reading that debate slide.
So, if I like the idea of actually having a gavel,
Mm-hmm.
and I like the idea of passing the gavel if the speaker or if the presiding person is going to want to speak and debate. Otherwise, well, but I guess if we're having a parliamentarian in there, does the parliamentarian just advise the person running the meeting on if they're doing something right, or?
A good parliamentarian there is to advise the members and the presiding officers. And
Presiding officer.
if you've got a secretary taking minutes, and if you've got people in IT doing polling, I think when it's an issue related to the conduct of the meeting and use of parliamentary procedure, a parliamentarian is going to be kind of the oil greasing the wheels. But they're not going to be helping a chair to be devious and to run things through without discussion. No, they're going to be helping it to be run with, with democratic ideals.
Okay.
And they're going to be educative. Jefferson said that democratic leaders educate the people and follow their will. I think that's a pretty good definition of a democratic leader. So, parliamentarian and a good president are always teaching, and they're always listening, and they're trying to carry out the will of the people after they and their other people do the job of making sure everybody knows what's going on and people are educated.
Do you want back, or you still want to be our vote?
Anybody else? Educate and follow the will of the people. Go ahead, Mark.
Jan, is Jan still here?
No, Jan
Jan?
left.
I don't think so.
Oh yeah, it is past 3.
Yeah, we went past these
Okay.
questions. Well, there's so much going on. I was expecting there to be more questions of what would come up during the slides.
They call me question mark.
Area.
If you give me the opportunity, I could ask questions till tomorrow. They call me question mark.
Now, on the board, you got to decide what of this is appropriate and what isn't. Parliamentary procedure, you could run by consensus, but maybe there are some votes. I don't know your policies as well as the bylaws, but I know you have your policies.
These people can talk and
Maybe you need counted votes. I don't know. You could tell me. But a lot of committees might hybridize, like Committee on Ministry does. Oh boy, this is a tough one. Let's just have a vote. The minister breaks the tie on the Committee on Ministry if the minister's there. They only get a vote if there's a tie. That's an interesting rule in their little 2-pager on their guidelines on the Committee on Ministry. All right, anybody else? Are we all set? We gotta let Sarah go and have the rest of her Sunday. Sarah, you did a great job. You did a great job. Yeah, I'm really happy that I got the crowd that I got and such good questions. And let's keep talking. And as we move forward, we've got some time between now and the annual business meeting, and we've raised some questions today, and the board members here can take those back and be planning ahead, knowing that if our congregation isn't educated well, or they might, complain about how that goes. Nobody told us we had to be on different devices and that kind of thing. So the earlier, the better, and we'll still get those complaints at the end. No matter how good a job you do. But that's the role of leadership. Sometimes you dot the I's and cross the T's, and you still get the complaints because people weren't paying attention. You guys take care. And
Thank you,
bye.
Tom.
We'll see you next
Thank
week.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.